All right, my name is Leona Laurie. I am your host, welcoming you to today's webinar, Making Your Promos Hyperlocal. And we've got three experts on today's panel. Steve, you want to wave down there so that people can see you in live camera too? So Steve is the owner of Generation Media LLC and the former Creative Services Director for WBAL-TV. And I've got his bio here, and we'll also make the PowerPoint available after today's session. So I think in the interest of expediting things, Steve, do you want to just say the things that you are most interested in having people know about you from your extensive bio that I've got here?
Thanks.
I put you on the spot.
That's okay. I've spent 15 years in broadcast television, where I met Randy Hart and the good folks at Megatrax, working primarily on air promotion and marketing end. For the last year now, I've been started with Generation Media, and just looking forward today to talk a little bit about on-air promotion and maybe a little put music into the mix.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And then, Mark, you want to wave from your window and say hello to everybody?
Hello, everyone.
So,
hi, Mom.
Mark is the news director at WHAG, and why don't you do the same thing Steve did and just give us a quickie introduction to the high points from your bio?
Well, I've been doing this broadcast work for about 30 years, radio, TV, and some other electronic type media, print media too. And I enjoy volunteering locally, and in my non-serious time, I even enjoy doing some impersonations for a local radio show that is a fundraiser every year, the Rumsey Radio Hour. And so hope we can talk today about the effective use of music and promotion and overall in news usage. I think people don't really stop and think about news music and associate the two together, at least general public.
Okay, well, there goes Mark. So we'll go ahead and move on since he was at a very natural stopping point and trust that he will rejoin us.
I'm sure he'll be back soon.
And Randy, you want to wave from your window?
Mark
Randy Hart, of course, the Creative Services Director for Aircast Music. And Randy, you want to give the high point from your bio as well?
Well, in addition to what's there, I'm seeing some of these things, and they go back an awfully long time. As it relates to what we're speaking of today, I met, as Steve had indicated, I met both Steve and Mark over the past, 15-ish years in their capacity. Steve is first a promo producer at WBAL, and then he ascended to Creative Service Director, and then I met Mark probably on that same trip. They are both Maryland-based. Steve was in Baltimore. Mark is in Hagerstown. And so our paths crossed then, and I thought they would be of value to discuss what we're going to talk about today.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to turn things over to Randy, who's going to act as our moderator for today's conversation. So I'm going to disappear myself. And Randy, I'm going to let you take it from here.
Well, all right. I will try to surreptitiously look at my notes, but when I'm looking this way, then I guess it's a dead giveaway. But anyway, the introduction to this piece is basically saying that with all of the changes in the landscape of media, both radio and television broadcast, the piece of the pie that is still very important, particularly for a television affiliate, is their news promotion. And promoting now on a variety of platforms gives a station the ability to reinforce who they are to the community. And basically, that's what I thought would be a good jumping off point to start today to talk about that. And as Mark had indicated, also to see how music relates to that as well, with all of the new graphics, the new sets, the new programming, the new on-air talent. A lot of times music is down on the list as far as being updated and being used in a contemporary way. And I don't want to get too far ahead of the program, but that is also a part of what we're going to talk about today. And I thought I'd start with Mark. Mark's station is unique in that he serves 4 states. Where he is located, he serves, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, Virginia, Maryland, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania.
That's correct, parts of those 4 states.
I thought, as a news director, just to talk about the localization of promos, how do you address what is important to those viewers? How do you try to localize it when you're talking about basically 4 different state news issues? Tell us a little bit about that, if you will.
Sure. Well, one thing to think about is as we serve parts of 4 different states, we bump up against, if you will, other stations. For example, also viewable in our area in Western Maryland is WRC Channel 4, all the other DC stations. But, there you have NBC4. Out of Baltimore, you have WBAL, which is an NBC station. In addition to the other Baltimore stations. To the north, we have the Harrisburg stations, and including Lancaster, PA, which has an NBC. So if individuals are looking for NBC product, they have several choices. And so, of course, if they're just looking for any television station in general, there's even more choices. So how do we, provide something that's unique? I always use an illustration of being in a shopping mall. You may have 2 or 3 anchor stores, and they all have the same product. But if you have one store that's unique, that is the only store in the mall that has that product you're looking for, before you leave that mall, you're going to be in that shopping or in that particular store. So we try to provide a product that is unique. We do that with our news, with our weather, with our sports. We cover high school and college sports here that no one else is covering. We cover the local events and in the news as far as the local council meetings and things like that, where the discussion of water rate increases and things like that are very local. And then our weather, we drill down right down to virtually to individuals' backyards, and the technology is there now for us to be able to do that. And one of the effective tools that we've found is to remind people of that in our promotional materials. Remind them that this is the place, this is the one store, if you will, at that shopping mall where you're going to get the unique product that you're not getting anyplace else, even though you have many, many choices. And that is the norm today. Even if you're not in a market such as we are here in Hagerstown, there are so many choices that individuals have through satellite delivery and so forth. So keeping it local has really been a valuable tool for us, and it helps keep us going.
So you're really kind of an extreme example of keeping it local, only because you do have the other options available. And
I always said we were local before local was cool.
Steve, let me ask you something. In conversations you and I have had, I've heard you say that what appears to be a simple concept of knowing what matters to your audience and a station's application of that has changed, has evolved dramatically. Elaborate a little bit on that, if you will.
Well, I think, as marketers, it's our job with our product to tout the values of it. But so many times we do that, and we don't necessarily gauge public feeling or the viewers' feelings on what's happening right now. Great example of that is in weather coverage. Just last year in Maryland, we had a fairly tough winter for Maryland. Would you agree, Mark? We had some regular snow and some stuff we normally don't get. So Absolutely. As the year went on, at a television station, we understand the radar, the experience of our meteorologists, and the breadth of our coverage that we do every day. But simply looking at things like our Facebook feeds and what's going on Twitter and what our viewers are saying, they were kind of over it. So for us to just bash them over the head with that type of message just didn't feel it. So I think what's really important is just to gauge that public opinion, that public feeling on a story, on the big story happening in your market, and try to tailor your message to that. I believe we have a visual aid that I brought in. It was one of the spots we did for a March storm, and after a really long winter, we tried to take an approach of, hey, look, we're in this too. We get it. We're sick of it as well. But hey, you still got to find out what's going to happen about school closings and about what's happening around you. So we may be able to see that now.
Doesn't it feel like winter has overstayed its welcome?
Hard to believe this is the beginning of March and we're talking about this kind of a snow event.
Whether you have to drive in it, walk through it, shovel it, or just wait it out, stick with the team that knows best.
And here comes the cold again.
Live updates, local reports from your neighborhood, and late-breaking alerts as we push through the winter that just won't end.
This is the first round of the system that's coming through.
From Chief Meteorologist Tom Tasselmeyer and the WBAL-TV 11 InstaWeather Plus team.
So you see there, we just took a...
Mark, is there any metric? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. We're on a little delay, but I was wondering if there was any metric, and for all the other TV and radio people out there, you'll probably already know the answer to this question as far as the effect of that promo.
Well, in a market like Baltimore, is a LPM market, so we get overnight ratings. I don't really think, unless you went out and did a focus group or something specific for that spot, I don't know if you would get that. Perhaps you could share it on YouTube or somewhere and see what kind of comments you get from the market. But I'm not a big believer in just putting just a complete marketing piece on social media. I think it needs to be a little tailored to more of that one-to-one communication with your audience. I don't know what Mark's feelings are on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think there's a clip that I had also submitted there, our weather promo as well. And it deals with inclement weather, but it deals with what we were doing specifically locally in our market. So we'll take a look at that.
Forested area braced for Superstorm Sandy. WHAG kept you informed.
You could see the large span of this storm.
Sandy is just an hour or two from making landfall.
Winds up to 50, 60 miles per hour.
Bringing you updates and alerts to keep your family safe.
We are dealing with full force conditions here.
Evacuations are commencing in Jefferson County.
That is just going to put this whole park underwater.
When severe weather strikes, count on WHAG News.
I've got to comment my observation being a music person. Obviously, we'll go to the music on both of those, which were quite different. Mark, yours, I don't know if yours was from your news package or if it was a production music cut. Steve, same situation to yours. Was that from the branded news package, or did you pull the piece from your music library?
I believe that was not part of our branded station package. You know, there's a lot of value. I know a lot of stations and station groups have branded packages, and there's a ton of value in that, in branding and packaging your television station. But there are those occasions when you want to do something a little bit outside of your brand, or something that's a little different than what you normally do. A new partnership, a big story, something outside of that day-to-day work, where you reach for some of those other libraries. And I think that's a situation where we did. I wasn't necessarily the producer on that one, but that doesn't sound like the package that we had.
Actually, that was from the Megatrax library. Total coincidence?
Oh, okay. That is an honest total.
It was from the Megatrax library.
Coincidence. Yeah.
Very nice. Okay, very good.
Well, go ahead.
Our pieces, well, that was from the production library, and there are instances where we use the branded music for promotional pieces. Our promotions director in this particular instance felt that Hurricane Sandy, it was a little more dramatic, was looking for a little more dramatic music bed underneath there, which she used.
Let me show, Leona, if you have this queued up, since we're showing weather proof of performance videos, promos. This was done by the CBS affiliate in Dallas, and this used one of the things I wanted to discuss today was a new news promo library, and actually this particular cut was used from, or this was used on this particular promo. It's their POP. Maybe.
Wait, one, sorry. the KTVT edit.
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
I don't know what to do.
The hail here is just intense and amazing.
The hail was, I bet you it was this big around.
Chief Meteorologist Larry Mowry. A rock star, in my opinion, our Chief Meteorologist Larry Mowry.
Look how this storm has just blown up.
I saw the river just going down my street.
We've got this great technology here at CBS 11.
You were covering this wall to wall.
I'm looking at the clock, and I'm wanting to shoot at a little bit of. I'm going to have to forego one topic, but I think more related. Let me ask you this, both to Mark and Steve, and everybody out there that's on the call that is affiliated with a station, be it television or radio. You've got websites, you've got Facebook pages, you've got you can tweet out to people, you can email people about a news story. How does social media in local promotion now drive either your choice of what to cover or how you cover it? And gents, go ahead, Steve, if you'll go first, then we'll go to Mark.
Okay. I think any news organization is going to make that editorial decision on the stories of the day. But public opinion and things you see trending on social media do have an impact. I think on the marketing side of that, one of the things we found is very, very clearly you need to create content for each one of those platforms. Simply taking your television creative, putting it on radio, putting it on, posting it to YouTube, putting it on your Facebook page, isn't necessarily going to get that reaction. While television is this, broadcast mass medium, where you're just kind of this one-way communication. Just putting a promo on Facebook isn't going to get that reaction that you get from a television spot. It's going to be immediately critiqued, and I think whatever you're doing there needs to be authentic. As you see from my tips there, local language is really important. I heard a story of a politician, one of my friends at the Boston stations, who referred to Worcester, Massachusetts as Worcester or something like that, and he was sunk after that. I think knowing what the people in your market and your viewers are doing how they refer to things, what they're doing day to day, what's important to them. A lot of times in promos in Baltimore, you'll see, the Inner Harbor, that classic imagery, and while that is a huge part of the area, it isn't really, where everybody commuting is going. Our Beltway and some of the less picturesque roads and bridges are really the places that are impact for people. I think we have another, if we have time for it, there is another spot. I think it was called AM News, the morning news spot that we have on my list.
Yeah,
I'll talk a little bit about
this
some
is
of that localizing.
Yeah, this is an example of actually the localization. Everywhere that everybody lives who's on this call, I'm sure you've got tourist spots that everybody knows about, restaurants, bars, historical places, but where the locals hang out and kind of off the beaten path, I think, is part of, would certainly be considered localization. Leona, if you could play that AM News clip.
WBAL-TV 11 News at 5, 6, and 7 a.m. The right now coverage you want.
Police in Catonsville are working to solve
weather and traffic alerts you need on the ones.
North Avenue slowing
and
down.
And constantly on the screen, even during commercials. Plus, breaking news covered from every angle.
Breaking news out of Baltimore.
Live, local, late breaking. Weekday mornings at 5 and 6 on WBAL-TV 11 and 7 a.m. on WBAL-TV+. Mornings are
And while there were some quick shots in there, those are some of the lesser known areas, bigger ones. But if you notice, the traffic reporter says North Avenue, not one of the main thoroughfares of Baltimore, like Lombard Street, Charles Street.
Mark, how do you?
Some of those places that people really know.
And again,
a little
there's
bit
just enough. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm good. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Steve. There's just enough of a delay, and they haven't quite perfected video conferencing yet. So if I interrupt you, it's unintentional. Please, I apologize.
No problem. Go ahead with your question to Mark.
Mark, as far as social media for you, how do you utilize from finding out what your audience wants to see? Do you use that in any way, shape, or form for feedback, as directing how you cover things, what you cover?
Well, I think we learned that after posting a few things on Facebook. Where we would post a story and then put the link back to our website. That's fine. People will follow that link, they come back to our website, and they watch that piece. What we found more effective, though, is simply taking a piece of that story and tailoring it to Facebook. And now suddenly people want to talk about it. They want to weigh in on it. So what we found is stories that lend themselves to expressing an opinion, to asking people, what do you think about this? How bad was the winter at your house this year? Those kind of things play much better than just putting out as you say, clipping a piece of video and putting a link back to our webpage. And each one is different. Twitter is different, it's a different animal there you've got, a limit as far as how much you're going to say. So sometimes that's more of breaking news. That seems to be very effective with breaking news. And what's interesting is to see, for example, if we roll up on an accident on the interstate highways here, we have 3 major interstate highways in our viewing area. If you put something out about an accident, pretty soon other things start coming back in. So it is very, very different than broadcasting. Broadcasting with radio and television, you shoot it out there and, everybody catches it and that's it. But with the social media, Twitter, Facebook, so forth, there's definite interaction, and people want that interaction. And I've been really taken with how people respond interaction where we put something out, then they comment, then we come along and we say, okay, that's interesting, but what about this? And there's this continued dialogue which seems to play very well, and it's drawing attention to our product, to our station, and the things that we're doing. But it's very interactive, and people feel like they're having a part in the discussion. And I have to admit, we have picked up stories from social media, or leads on stories that came first from social media.
Interesting. Yeah, it's kind of the Wild West as far as how stations are using social media. I'm sure it's in its infancy, but it will be fascinating to see where this evolves to. Leona, I know you had asked for some ideas from each of us, and you've got Mark's tips up there, which he just saying keep it local, and the music element is the scene setter, which of course he's preaching to the choir when he says that to me. Steve, if you want to go through your tips that she has up on the screen now.
Sure. Some of the stuff that we saw at some of the spots, local imagery is important. And as Randy pointed out, not just your big tourist spots, but the places that the people who really make up your market, people who are, your metered homes or diary homes, is important. Local language, talk like a local in your copy. Make sure, you are setting that scene that, hey, we're one of you, we're here, we're in it together. And, as always, music is a key driver. You saw from the two spots that we produced, the sandy spot and the snow spot, two weather spots, two different levels of severity. I think sandy's a much more significant, serious event, but you can see how music sets that tone between the two promos. And, it all comes down to whether it's on social media, the spots you're producing, you just know what matters to your audience. What are their feelings on this story? And while, we don't all have big research budgets and focus groups on hand, you do have social media, and you do have some instant feedback that you're getting from your audience every day. I think that's a pretty good place to take that initial temperature of what's going on in your area.
Yes, yeah. My tips start with the music first. A lot of times, if you have a storyline in mind, you can audition a few different music cuts and see which one resonates well with the mood and the emotion of the story. It can help you with pacing. It can even drive you to maybe some different visual ideas that you hadn't thought of. Establish the emotional connection. The ultimate victory is to persuade somebody to watch or listen to your broadcast. And whether it's in an immediate story airing later on that night, or you're reminding people of the coverage that you do provide them, the way the station is connected to the community can be enhanced. That message and that communication can be enhanced with the right music. Try a contrarian approach. That's something that a friend of mine that I was on a panel with had an idea of, and he showed a great example. I don't have one here, but it was very effective in trying something that is just 180 degrees different from what the storyline is. And it can really, not only from the standpoint of getting someone's attention, but it can really kind of stop from an entirely different level. It can stop and make you think when you're kind of expecting a certain type of music, a certain sound to be incorporated into an audio-visual piece, and you're hearing something that is totally contrarian. It can be very, very effective.
Well, Randy, I have an example of that. Somebody was mentioning this to me some time ago, and that is, when you watch, it takes us back to the old Looney Tunes cartoons, that we watched in the 50s and 60s, but they're still around. Did you ever notice the music that's used in those cartoons? It's classical.
Yeah, it is.
It's classical. It is so contrary, and you would think having a rabbit bounding down over the side of a hill would be the exact opposite of a classical piece by Beethoven. But that's what they used, and it is so effective.
That's a great point. That's a great illustration of that, Mark. Absolutely. The fourth tip that is on this list is checking out a new library that Megatrax has released called Hyperlocal. And in short, with all of the changes that are going on with broadcast and all of the needs that kind of rear their heads on a regular basis, this new news promo library was created that started, the direction of it was started by having a committee, creating a committee of creative service directors, promo producers, news directors, and giving us feedback on what they are really lacking the most. And this library, in short, is a result of that feedback. It's based very much in that feedback, in that the style of the individual, of the music compositions of the news promo pieces are
Randy, your audio just cut out all of a sudden. Nope, I don't know what's going on. We're having a mystery. I think what I'd like to do, though, if it's okay with you, is use this as an opportunity to. Oh, I see. Somehow you must have hit something on your computer. There you are. Okay. So go ahead and finish your point, and then we've actually reached the end of the allotted 30 minutes here. So Steve and Mark, are you both available to go a little bit long if anybody has any questions they wanted to ask?
Absolutely.
Sure.
Okay, great. So Randy, go on ahead, and then let's open it up to questions from the audience.
Well, I was simply, I'm going to kind of close the explanation of Hyperlocal. So what we did, I'm not sure when my audio cut off, but the normal news stories that people have, the investigative stories, the breaking news, the weather pieces, the community pieces, what we did was identify common subjects and essentially scored mini soundtracks to those subjects. And that's what the Hyperlocal news promo series is about. It's a different approach rather than just the
No, that's okay. Randy, before we move on to full Q&A, Ron asked when we played that clip from KTVT, if you could identify the track that was on that. Do you know what track that was from Hyperlocal in the KTVT clip? Okay, so let's go ahead and open it up to questions from the crowd. There are two ways you can ask us a question today. You'll notice at the top of your screen there's a little icon of a man with his hand raised. So if you'd like to ask your question using the mic on your computer, raise your hand using that little fellow and I can unmute your microphone. Otherwise, if you want to just use the chat window that's on the screen, that's easy and we can all see it. So if there are any questions, we can take a couple before we wrap up for today. Looks like we have one coming in from Eric.
Eric Dahl, by the way, while we're waiting, is the creative service director of the Sinclair station here in Nashville, the Fox affiliate, and they've got other stations as well, but that's their primary station is the Sinclair Fox affiliate here.
So to cut through the clutter of other news promos and competitors, what are some options? Does anybody want to take that?
Steve, Mark?
Well, I think you have to look for unique things, unique elements. You know, in the marketing world, in the commercial world, there's a million commercials out there, and it gets to be even more cluttered, I think, than the news promos. So, you know, what's memorable? You know, the different, the unique, maybe the offbeat. And I think, again, that personal connection, if you show, I think Steve had mentioned it, you know, showing local things where people can go, oh yeah, they recognize it, or oh, I was there. Those kind of things are the connections that people make personally. That seems like that's pretty effective. It's always a competition though with everything that's out there, but that's my thoughts.
Steve, what do you think?
You know, yeah, there's a lot of local pride in many of the cities across the U.S. You know, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, New York. There are a lot of places where people are proud to be from there. Of your media, your spots, your social media, how you present that. I think that goes a long way with viewers. I think kind of we're all in this together approach without necessarily having to be soft. You know, if you're a hard news station and you guys do, you know, hard stories, breaking news, that sort of coverage, you could still take an approach where you know you're working with the community and being part of it without softening your image. And I think you know, your imagery that you use and the music that you pick will go a long way at making that happen.
And further to that, I'll add that if you have the right imagery and you can illustrate your story with less VO, I think there's some great voices of guys that are doing VO, but I think that frequently it is too much. And I think there's another way to tell that same story with simply the proper imagery as well as the proper piece of music. And I know that may sound funny coming from a music person. I'm a firm believer in that if you put something up on the screen that looks like a 30-second mini movie, if it's properly done, it will tell the story and it will be a great promotion for whatever that story is. Any other questions, Leona?
Yeah, I think, why don't we take one more and then we will call it a day, gentlemen.
Drum roll, please.
Steve and Mark from Ron Mendelson, what was the most challenging news story that you ever had to promote? It's a great question.
I will say the first thing that comes to my mind, and I have a psychologist friend who says that's probably the best answer. We had two sailors, local sailors, who died aboard the USS Cole when it was bombed by the terrorists. And of course, we covered the funeral, the homecoming, everything that went on with it. And of course, afterwards, we wanted to demonstrate to individuals that, you know, that we covered this event, international terrorist act that touched our very community. But we chewed on that for a long time because we did not want it to appear to the community that we were cashing in on the tragedy. So I think that was probably one of the hardest ones that we really had to kind of think about. And I think the approach was very different. That when we used a lot of still photos in showing individuals, you know, the high school where one young man attended, draped in black, students, you know, wiping their eyes, things like that, and sort of hearkening back to this was an event that deeply touched our community, and took it more from that angle rather than saying, "Hey, look what we brought you." It was more of here was a shared tragedy.
Interesting.
I agree with
really
Mark.
Go ahead, Steve.
I do agree with Mark that when there are tragic stories, tragedies locally or even regionally, those are the toughest stories to promote. In Baltimore, we covered the Virginia Tech shooting a few years back, the shooting at the elementary school in Connecticut, and just recently in our market, there was a shooting at a local mall here in Columbia, Maryland. And the most challenging part is to, you aren't as a news organization trying to capitalize on this tragedy, but there is a public appetite for information. And with a television station, especially a station like ours, with the power of NBC News, our local folks covering it, you know, it is important to get that message out of, hey, we will be taking press conferences live. We will be streaming things live. So if it isn't a traditional news time, we will be covering this story. But there really is a sensitivity to how you get that information out. But, you know, while you don't want to be seen as taking advantage of a situation like that, there is a strong appetite for information. People are going to be looking for it. You need to let them know that you're someone.
And I'll close a similar situation here when Nashville had its historic flooding back in, I'm a poor judge of time, 2011. The NBC affiliate here did a promotion, but it was really not a promotion. It was simply kind of a nod of the hat to the community for stepping up as the entire community did. And there was there's a 30-second piece, but we won't play it now, but they ran it every night. They actually ran the full long form video that they had shot, which was about a 3-minute video. And it was very impactful. The emotion of it was just extraordinary, seeing rescues, seeing people, you know, losing their livelihoods in a split second. And the promo, the only mention of the affiliate was at the very end, just a little bug down in the lower third, the station logo at the very end of the piece. Very, very strong. Anyway, Leona, I think you need me to wrap it up, I would guess.
Well, I think we're at a good stopping point. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time and contributing your expertise to today's webinar.
You're welcome.
And thank you so much to everyone who was able to join us live today. And I will be getting this video out to anyone who's interested in it just as soon as I possibly can.
All right. Thank you, Steve and Mark, so much. I appreciate your expertise.
Yes, sir. Glad to help out.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye, everybody. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.